Good evening, and welcome to Political Powwow. I'm Kevin Goddard.
And I'm Paul Glavey. Tonight our guests are the candidates for state representative in the 14th Middlesex District. First, the incumbent, Republican John Loring, and independent candidate Maureen Finlayson, and the Democratic nominee, Pamela Reeser.
After this short break, we'll begin our discussion.
This is Aaron Crickstein, the youngest professional tennis player to reach the top 10. He's practicing hard to win major tournaments. His friend Todd is struggling hard to beat a much larger opponent, cystic fibrosis, the #1 genetic killer of children and young adults. The Association of Tennis Professionals has joined the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in funding the search for a cure because now is the time to beat cystic fibrosis. Please join our team. The ATP and Cystic Fibrosis Foundation working together.
Hey, this is Bob Hope. Cancer is a problem with many parts. To understand and to stop it require expert knowledge from virtually every field in science. The National Foundation for Cancer Research has organized an international network of scientists. It helps them turn their ideas into discoveries and combine those discoveries into a complete picture. Together, they believe they can solve the problem of cancer. To keep informed, write the National Foundation for Cancer Research.
Welcome back. My first question is to all of the candidates. This race, and all the races it seems this year, seem to be held in the framework and in the reflection of the presidential race between George Bush and Michael Dukakis. I'd like to ask each of you to comment how you see yourselves in comparison to our governor, the Democratic nominee for president, Michael Dukakis. And I'll ask that question first of Maureen.
Well, first of all, I'm running as an independent, not as a Democrat. So what I'll do is compare my issues and my policies with what Mike Dukakis has done here at the state. What I'd like to focus on first is the budget. Mike Dukakis has put forth revenue projections of 8.3%, add 4% new tax initiatives and new taxes, brings us to 12.2%. I believe those numbers are cooked. I don't believe them. I think because of that, we are going to see a deficit in the coming years. I think we're going to be dealing with about a $500 million to $1 billion deficit. I don't agree with new taxes. I believe there's many areas in the budget that can be cut. A lot of waste, a lot of tightening up of management that needs to be done. And specifically in what the governor has done in the last 5 years in doubling the budget from 6 to 12. And we've seen about 10,000 new employees. What I'd like to do is to put forth a policy of seeing some of those cut, particularly 03 contracts. I would like to see the MDC consolidated. I would like to see the state motor pool reduced. And many of the initiatives that the Dukakis administration has failed to take, and which is why we're in the problem that we have right now fiscally.
Okay. Pam, how do you view the Dukakis administration?
Certainly there are areas that I disagree in terms of the way the shortfall was handled and the cuts were made. I think that we needed a lot more honesty and openness from the very beginning when the revenue shortfalls were discovered. But I think overall there are a lot of strengths in the current administration, and they have dealt with a lot of growth in terms of services, particularly in the environmental area, which is probably the area I'm most familiar with. There have been new initiatives every year that have had to be added on to what DEQE deals with, and they are important, and I am very supportive of them, but there's much more to be done in that particular area. I think a lot of times the governor has sought a middle ground and has sought to create a balance in terms of his support for environmental issues and for human service issues, and I think that's an important thing to continue. The governor has also supported local communities very strongly over the years in terms of the local aid, and set really the present status of 40% of growth revenues, and also getting them back to us in time to make our planning at the local level, and I think those are valuable things that we need to continue.
John, you've been working in the legislature, and from that vantage point, how do you view the Dukakis administration?
Well, I think it's just been an administration of spend and spend and use every dollar that comes in revenue and not have any kind of program of saving for a rainy day. And I think we're going to get our comeuppance from that in the next couple of years. I think the important thing is that there really is no stopper on the excesses of the governor and the legislature because of the impossible imbalance in the legislature. I think that the 127 Democrats and 33 Republicans in the House is just so overwhelming for the Democratic majority that there's no reason to really debate and compromise when the leadership and the majority decides to do something. They almost can just do it without real opposition, and I think that's very unfortunate, and I think that it's the reason why we just have to have more Republicans elected, to have that give and take and moderation of programs that can take place with a more balanced legislature. I would say beyond that in fairness, it's no worse now with Democrats with such a massive majority than it was in the 30s when the Republicans had that kind of massive majority. I mean, it's just the nature of too much majority.
My first question is to Pam.
Mm-hmm.
You've been characterized in some quarters as being a single-issue candidate, that issue being the environment, through your work at the local level and more recently as Executive Director of the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. Beyond the environment, is there a record of public accomplishment on other issues?
Yes, there certainly is. Throughout my time and training in League of Women Voters, studied a variety of issues, in fact, primarily human service issues. Housing issues have been something I have dealt with all the way through, including the task force that set up the Affordable Housing Citizens Group, so that I have dealt with housing on a continuous basis. I've also been active on the Cooperative Elder Services and dealt with elderly needs both outside of town government and within in terms of supporting the full-time staffing of the Council on Aging. I have also been very active in providing the mental health services, not directly in terms of the association, but I was on the Concord Area Mental Health Advisory Board and dealt with the siting of housing, community residential housing within the community. So those are all areas that I have participated in actively, and there are more. Also, of course, as a selectman, you can't avoid the budgeting, the coming within the constraints of 2.5 during the time period that I was an active selectman, so that I have been under the constraints that I will now face at the state level with the capping.
Okay. My next question to John. Over the years and in this campaign, your style of representation has been criticized. You've been called quiet and passive, a person who follows rather than leads the debate. How do you respond to those who say we need a more active voice in the State House?
Well, I think it's really a very unfair characterization because leadership can take many forms, and we all have our aptitudes, and I think I take advantage of what I think are my best aptitudes. And from the standpoint of constituency service, there's no better constituent service, I think, than what the people that I represent have gotten in the 14 years that I've been there. In the legislature, I do accomplish a great deal through the negotiation and discussion, and particularly in committee work. And I think a key to that is the ability to sit and discuss issues in small groups like committees, and to make the adjustments and the input that's required to make for what I think is very often better legislation that comes out of the committees. It's actually where the strength is of the Republican Party in the legislature, because we do attend public hearings and we do attend committee meetings. So very often we'll be having a a public hearing with the chairman, who's always a Democrat, and I can't very well get to be leadership in a committee because of the nature of they're always Democrats. But there'll be the chairman and maybe one or two other members present, and the 2 or 3 Republican members of the committee will be there too. And that's how the decisions are made, by the number of the committees that are there, unless somebody asks for a polling of the committee. So there is strength and there is productive work done through the committee work, which is tantamount to producing legislation.
Okay. And to Maureen, since you began your campaign, you've been associated with 3 political parties. At the start, you were a Democrat. Later, you became an independent, and on primary day, your name appeared as a write-in on some Republican ballots. What kind of credibility can you expect to have with voters when you move among the parties with what appears to be such ease?
Well, one is my writing campaign was one that was an issue-oriented writing campaign, and it was one to raise the issue of comprehensive building permits, one that is an issue. I have a different position from Pam and from John. Pam and John both support comprehensive building permits. Pam's issue in this campaign is the environment, and therefore I'm very puzzled with her position on comprehensive permits. It allows development in environmentally sensitive areas, and one that I'm very concerned about. John takes a position for comprehensive building permits. It's a bureaucracy making decisions where that should be made at local in the local government and by local people. And again, John claims to be against large bureaucracies and big government, so I'm perplexed at his position. And we were successful in that writing campaign. We felt any vote, even one vote, would be successful in that, and it was. I'm an independent. I'm running as an independent because I'm an independent thinker. And I believe that we need someone in the legislature that's not going to conform to a particular slate of positions because the party leadership says that you must conform in either party, Democrat or Republican. People in the 14th Middlesex are very independent-minded, and they want to elect somebody who's going to take a look at the issue, going to take a look at all the things going into an issue, and is going to make a decision that's best for the district, and not one that is going to be made based on political pressures or lobbyists or whatnot. And I'm running as an independent. Being an independent does not, there is no party termed independent. And I am at ease with the people in the 14th Middlesex District of all parties.
Paul.
I'd like to ask this question of 2 of our candidates, since they were both office holders at the time of the event I'm about to discuss. A few years back, the town of Acton suffered contaminated water supplies from the Grace Chemical Company. If I'm not mistaken, Pam, you were on the Board of Selectmen at that time?
Shortly after. It was that incident that had inspired me to run.
And John, you were a legislator representing the town of Acton at that time.
Right. I think I might have been on the Board of Selectmen
as well,
too, in the beginning of it.
Okay. Pointedly, I'd like to ask each of you how you saw your role at the time. How did you exhibit leadership during that period of crisis for the town of Acton? And how should the people of the 14th Middlesex District view that as a way of assessing you as a candidate? And I'll begin with John Loring.
Well, I think the important thing to remember is that the water supply is under the jurisdiction of the water district. And it was the water district reaction and activities in the cleanup and what had to be done and the suits with W.R. Grace that ultimately turned out very profitably for the town as far as cleaning up the water is concerned. But it was really a water district program, and certainly from the standpoint of my function as a state representative at the time, I had to be concerned with the liaison between DEQE and the EPA and W.R. Grace and the town, the water district, and the Board of Selectmen, who obviously had a serious interest in it too. And I was involved in many meetings with W.R. Grace, and these were meetings that were the groundwork for what was the development of a cleanup program that ultimately took place. It did take time, but I think that we've really come to the point where The cleanup is in place. The water treatment facilities have been developed. Thanks in part to a grant that I initially got for the water district to build filter systems, carbon filter systems for the various wells, and then beyond that, thanks to the court decision, which gave W.R. Grace a responsibility, and the town was, so they paid for a major portion, and the town was able to reimburse the state some of the grant money that was given to them. So it was, again, it was not one of, it wasn't a full-time occupation of running out and getting my feet in the mud and getting the headlines, but there was a lot of background work and a lot of discussion that had to go on between a lot of parties to put the program together that cleaned up the water.
Pam?
Well, I guess even using the past tense is a concern to me because there are still so many issues involved in that whole area. The closure of 40% of our town water was appalling to me, and I felt very much that I wanted to get involved immediately in making sure that things were carried forward. And it was much more than the water district because we had not only that initial closure of water to deal with, but we later had an oil hexane spill and also the styrene incident. And so we had continuous problems due to lack of proper management there on the site to some degree, lack of setting up procedures that were appropriate and protective enough for our water supply. And it was something we dealt with for several years and are still dealing with, to the extent that the waste there has not been capped or removed. And so we still have that to follow through on, and it has required much time of DEQE, EPA, and the Board of Selectmen, as well as our lawyers, to continually review every proposal that came from W.R. Grace and the responses that came from DEQE and EPA. And I feel that this is something that we've made some steps to protect the community in terms of the developing of an underground storage regulation, and also protection of our aquifers so that this type of thing will not be built in our aquifer areas, but there's much still to be done.
Okay. Maureen, an independent candidacy is an interesting thing to follow. And it also, I would say, leads to the question frequently as to where does an independent go when they get into the legislature? I guess I would ask specifically, which side of the legislature aisle would you sit on, and where do you view yourself in the future should victory come to you on November 8th?
Well, that's a decision for November 9th. An independent elected to the House or to the Senate, which there have been historically, have the option of remaining independent or choosing a caucus, be it the Republican or the Democratic caucus. And again, for myself, right now I'm concentrating on the issues and concentrating on this campaign. That would be a decision that would be made on November 9th. However, I might add that right now, as a citizen, not as a legislator, would be more effective than the current legislator that we have right now, although he is enrolled in one party. What the legislator is comprised of are people that go in, that vote, and they debate, and they debate, and they vote. Mr. Loring votes, however, he fails to debate. I have had my staff people research to find out when the last time Mr. Loring spoke on the floor of the House, and we've been unable to find that. And in fact, Mr. Loring might be able to enlighten us to tell us when that time was and what the subject was that was debated on the floor of the House. I think that when we're talking about an independent candidacy being something that's interesting, I think that we're also talking about a citizen that is running, and that to have other candidates of any party question the right of somebody to run, regardless of whether they're running as a Democrat, Independent, or Republican, is one that concerns me. I think that it's one that needs to be addressed. But again, that's a decision for November 9th.
Okay, I have a question for John. John, when incumbents seek re-election, it is usually because they believe they've done a good job representing their communities. How is this true in your case, and on what specific issues have you succeeded?
Well, I think it's true in my case just from the standpoint of the people in my district have elected me to public office since 1956. I was first elected to the planning board in 1956. and never lost an election after that. Well, yes, I did lose a couple, but was elected almost continuously in public office in Acton from 1956 right to the present time. I think that that kind of experience and background, and Pam talks about all her experience, 6 years on the planning board. I can point to 9 years on the Board of Selectmen. I can point to 9 years on the Board of Selectmen. I was 5 years on the Board of Assessors. I was 6 years on the planning board, and involved in all of the issues and the landmark decisions that had to be made in a town that grew from in the vicinity of 4,500 people when I first got elected to the planning board, and no zoning bylaws in the town until about a year before I was elected to the planning board. So we were right in the middle of the serious growth period. Just all those years of experience and background have given me, I think, a perspective to be able to better solve and more sensibly solve the problems that come in the future. And I should point out that, you know, Pam says the environment still has a lot to do. It certainly does. But I think it is important to point to the past. At least I have to. She doesn't have a record. I have a record. I have to point to the past, to what I've done and what we have done in the legislature and I've had a part of. We have considerably enhanced and increased the funding and the staffing of DEQE in environmental areas. We've blended in with the Superfund of the federal government and set up our own Superfund. We've done, have taken giant steps in the area of solid waste disposal. We still have problems in all of those areas, and they have to be continually addressed. And I hope to be able to continue to address those problems in the future.
Let me ask the same question a little differently, obviously, to Maureen and then Pam. When candidates oppose an incumbent, it is usually because they believe that the incumbent has failed to adequately perform the job. On what issues, in your view, has John Loring failed?
One in particular, and that's an issue that is of prime importance right now with regards to development, and that is allowing a state agency to override local zoning. Mr. Loring has been asked time and time again to address the comprehensive permit issue, one that allows the EOCD and the Housing Appeals Committee to override zoning. Mr. Loring has just turned his back on that. He says, he feels that the state bureaucracy makes a better decision and a better judgment decision on developments in this district than does the local planning board, the local zoning board and the town meeting members. I disagree. I also find that Mr. Loring claims to have passion on many issues. Pam is very interested in the environment, and I think she's true to that. Mr. Loring has a newfound interest in the environment. I base that on his voting record, which I've studied and looked at in the past. And I've also researched Mr. Loring's passion on the issues as far as what he has done in introducing legislation. How many bills has he filed? How many of those bills have made it out of committee? He's filed 40 bills this year. None have made it out of committee. He talks about a lot of committee work. I imagine he must do a lot of committee work because none of them make it to the floor of the House. A Republican